Welcome to SoundThread. SoundThread is this really cool non-real-time audio processing tool. It's based on the Composer's desktop project, which is this really old, it's like from the 90s, command line based tool. So you basically type in like file blah 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 .wav reverb and put in the settings, press go, and it would add reverb to it instead of doing it in the way you do now where you put plugin on a track. It's completely free. Basically the way it works is there's loads of these processes. Here's like some new additions. This is non-real time as well, so you can kind of do stuff that you do in regular DSP you'd have to do with a buffer. So like folding, inverting, or randomizing the spectrum. I don't know if you can do that in real time. Or like there's just some crazy shit in here, like fractally distort spectrum by transposition. Like this is not stuff you hear about. So it basically just simplifies Composer's desktop project for you, and it makes it really easy to use, and you can use it in a node-based way. So you can have everything in front of you, you can see all the parameters of everything at once, and it manages the files and does everything very nicely. I guess the drawbacks to it is it doesn't include every single effect within Composer's desktop project, but there's other programs that do the same thing as, like this is Sound Shaper, but as you can see, it's not very intuitive to run. You basically load a file and then you can do the processing on it like this. And here you get more of Composer's desktop project's effects. It's a lot more complicated and it has lots of errors and things don't make sense. I'll do a little example. There's no folder memory on this as well, which is... There's just a random drum loop. So if I want to process it now, I go to sound file, say reorder, sorter. Yeah. So yeah, it's cool. Like, there's some cool effects, but yeah, using this isn't exactly like simple and straightforward. So this is the SoundThread interface. Very simple. I recommend turning on the grid and snap. So you basically have your input file, which is this box here, and an output file. You can move around, you can select with this, and you can obviously hold shift to select multiple things and whatever. If you hold the middle mouse wheel, you can pan around, zoom in and out with the mouse wheel, and then it's right click to add a node. It brings up this little search box, or you can press Control E to bring up the more detailed menu of effects. And there's also, yeah, in other help, keyboard and mouse shortcuts, shows you everything. It's pretty standard. I'd recommend turning on reuse last output folder because then it's not going to use the same output folder every time. And I'd also recommend turning on delete intermediate file. If you have lots of nodes here, every single node is not going to keep its output. You're just going to have one output for the whole processing chain. And you can save and load processing chains as well. So I have a folder in my samples folder, but I'm actually going to make a new one because I just got a million SoundThread files in there. Right, so let's load a file. I'd recommend opening a file explorer. I'm going to start with some breakbeats and go through some of the effects. Here's a simple breakbeat. The node browser is Control E, and here you can see all of the nodes, and it gives you a little description on all of them. You can favorite them as well, and this opens a little help and explains what it does. So let's get a simple one. Fractal. Superimpose miniature copies of wave cycles onto itself. Yeah, and then you can change the parameters. Here you have a randomize button and also, and this is the help. So then you just press run thread. And there you go. You get some pretty weird sounds already. Like, so for distortion, we have a lot of interesting modes. What the fuck? Maybe time stretch it a little bit. Put it out of the time stretcher into basically hardstyle kick. Oh, sometimes it does fail. I think this is because the cycle count. A lot of these don't. It doesn't explain why it fails. Like it just kind of failed. Error failed to pass input file. And the cycle count here is probably higher than the length of the sample. But as you can see, this is already an extremely different workflow to any sort of DAW. It makes you think about sounds in a completely different way, and we've barely scratched the surface. Another thing I'd like to demonstrate is the interesting time stretching algorithms. So we have the distortion one, repeat, so this just repeats the wave cycles. Kind of almost sounds like Ableton's texture mode, but when the cycle count is really low, it sounds really different. We also have a granulate one in the granulate section. Now, there's this thing called p-voc, which stands for phase vocoding. You basically have to convert a sound from the amplitude over time domain to amplitude over frequency domain, and then you process it within that domain. So every time you use a p-voc effect, you'll see it has a black node, and you have to convert it and convert it back every time you do a p-voc effect. So the p-voc effects are in the frequency domain section. So here's the p-voc time stretching algorithm. Let's have a look at some of the more p-voc effects. Exaggerate the spectral contour. So I put that in the time stretcher, and then maybe do some fractal distortion afterwards. Whoa. Let's try different effects instead of time stretching it. Whoa. This is still being updated, so I'm sure there'll be more like shortcuts and things, but it's still a bit janky. Like if you want to quickly remove this, there's no bypass button on these, for example, which would be super useful. Get a synth loop this time. Have a look at drunk. There's another drunk sound in the time domain here, and this is basically like a granulator, just kind of randomly scanning through a wave. And this is the spectral version of that. So I'm going to try some combine effects now. My favorite one is format and vocode. I'm going to get to synth loops. The way these are plugged in matters as well. Also this format section, which is pretty insane. I'll give you an example of what that sounds like. I don't know how useful this is for actually making tracks in here, but you definitely can make loads of cool effects that are completely unique. There's so much crazy stuff I haven't touched on. For example, the filters. House beat. But yeah, this is SoundThread. It's very cool. I'd recommend giving it a go. It's free. It's really easy to install. The install guide is on the GitHub. And yeah, it's just a different workflow, and yeah, just go crazy.